So now we are going to begin the Greenock session. The Greenock session is the presentation of our works. Very often that have been shared with all the team. And this is our young practitioners or interns that are going to present their work, and physiotherapists this afternoon maybe, that are going to present their work and that belong to the Greenock group. So after that we can have some discussion maybe to help them to develop their research axis. Thank you so much. So Marjorie, it's up to you.
Okay, hello everyone. So thank you, Francois, to giving me the opportunity today to talk about this work, which is the work from the Greenock, not mine. So I'm going to talk about how anatomic features permit to develop systematic approach to accurately determine muscles to treat in order to improve spastic joint function. So first, you know that it's sometimes hard to differentiate hypertonia and contractures after stroke. It can be quite challenging, and the elbow spasticity is pretty frequent. That decrease elbow extension, which lead to a decrease of functional capacity, and at least it impacts on quality of life. So to treat this elbow spasticity, you can use a botulinum toxin or use the functional surgery. Since we used the botulinum toxin maybe 20 years ago, there is still no guidelines regarding injection patterns. And maybe that's the reason why studies fail to show botulinum toxin efficiency. Determining the appropriate muscle to inject is not simple. There is a few muscles involved in the same spastic pattern. So sometimes we choose the wrong muscle. It can be the more superficial because it's easy to inject. It can be but you have to wonder if it's the strongest or if it's just easy because it's the biggest. You have to also think about anatomical structure of the muscle, which are the muscles, the antagonist muscles. Is it the strength position in this precise deformation? I'm thinking about the biceps brachii. And another trap is doing like everyone else, or just because our boss told us that it was like that, or just because we are using to it. Or another trap also is to be stuck to the recommendations. It's also very hard sometimes to do the difference between spasticity and retraction. So at least how to inject the right muscles. And we took the example of the elbow flexors. So according to the literature, there is 3 main elbow flexors that can lead to a spastic deformations. There is the biceps brachii, the brachioradialis, and the brachialis. There is also accessory muscles, and the aim, obviously, is to determine the appropriate muscles to botulinum toxin injections. So in previous studies, there is a very interesting one, because it's in a large prospective study. That was investigated it was investigating the injection practice in 122 centers, and it was all around the world. You can see on the slide that the biceps is the more common targeted compared to the other flexor muscles. And for each muscles injected, there is no difference between Europe and the rest of the world. So now when you have a close look to what is happening in Europe, you can see that depending on the country, it's not always the same muscle with injected. And one more time, it's the biceps, the most injected muscles. In this table, it's a review of the literature. So all the authors were agree to say that the first muscle that they inject in the flexor spasticity patterns was the biceps, it was not the case for the brachialis or the brachioradialis, so those ones were less injected than the biceps. So those muscle targets, they're very heterogeneous, and most of the injections were performed in the biceps brachii. But we, based on our clinical experience, we think that the biceps brachii is overestimated and the brachialis is underestimated. So, because when you look closer to the anatomic consideration, to the anatomic muscle, the biceps brachii is a multi-joint muscle, so its strength is depending on the stability of the scapula, and we know that it's not the case for patients with hemiplegia. This muscle is also fusiform and digastric, so it ending on a common distal tendon, and that this muscle is less able to bear stress and it loses power. We also know that the biceps brachii is a forearm supinator, so in the pattern, in the flexion and the pronation pattern, this muscle is lessly involved. So the biceps brachii is not a strong elbow flexor compared to the brachialis. Now when you look closer to the brachialis, this muscle is a single joint and pinnate muscle, so this muscle is more powerful. He has direct insertions of his muscular fibers in the fascia that increase the resistance to stress and increase the capacity to transmit power. So we think that this muscle is the elbow's strongest flexor muscle. Now, to provide an appropriate treatment for a spasticity pattern, a comprehensive assessment is necessary to determine muscles involved. So we carry out study with successive motor nerve blocks in order to identify the role of each muscle on a spasticity pattern. So we choose the example of the arm flexion. So to inhibit the brachialis muscle, we have to block the brachialis nerve. But when you want to block the musculocutaneous nerve that causes innervating two muscles, we found a way to separate the two muscles, doing a block specifically in the brachialis branch of the nerve, and that leads to an inhibition of the brachialis muscle. So the first aim of this study was to determine the anatomical landmarks for the brachialis nerve block using fresh cadavers. The second aim was the use of 3 sequential selective blocks to find the implication of each elbow flexor muscles in arm flexion pattern among hemiplegic patients. And the third aim was to apply this strategy to other joints deformation. So for the first part of the study, we got 20 fresh cadavers, 20 arms. We identified the anatomical path of the brachialis motor branch. So the musculocutaneous nerve was traced from the coracoid process to the middle of the elbow crease, and the biceps brachii was discarded, and the branches of the musculocutaneous nerve that innervated to the brachialis were identified, so just there. We got 4 measurements. D0 was the distance from the medial epicondyle to the coracoid process. The D1, the distance from the medial epicondyle to the exit point of the brachialis motor branch. And the D2, the distance from the medial epicondyle to the entry point of the brachialis motor branch. And R was the depth of the needle insert transversally. The mean distance, D1, was 155 millimeters. So this one from the medial epicondyle to exit point from the brachialis motor branch, and the 102 was the mean distance D2, so from the medial epicondyle to the entry point of the brachialis motor branch. And when you do the comparison, D1 minus D2, there is 53 millimeters here, just here. So this is a range of the targeting region for the brachialis nerve block. And here it's the depth, so 28 millimeters in the arm. So to block the brachialis branch of from the musculocutaneous nerve, a medial approach should be used. One hand wide above the medial epicondyle, just below the belly of the biceps brachii. And it's 3 centimeters-ish deep. For the second part of this study, we got 20 patients with stroke-related spastic hemiparesis. And the inclusion criteria were spastic arm flexion pattern 3 or 4, fixed elbow deformity less than 120 degrees. Patients were all indoors walker, and they follow a regular program of botulinum toxin injection. And so we injected 4 milliliters of lidocaine 1% under electrical stimulation. The first block performed was the brachialis motor branch. 30 minutes later, the radialis motor nerve were blocked. And the third block was the musculocutaneous motor nerve. And we collect some data. The spontaneous elbow angle in standing, the active range of elbow extension. They were both performed before and after each successive block. And other data regarding spasticity were collected. And here it was all the patients from the study. So for 2 of them, the brachialis and the biceps brachii were involved. And for 1 of them, only the biceps brachii was involved. For all the rest of people, we consider that the brachialis was the main muscle involved in the elbow flexion, the spasticity. So when we look to the mean data, changes in elbow angle following the selective block motors, the biggest gain for the elbow extension was after the first block. So after the brachialis block, we got an improvement of the angle and the spasticity angle of the elbow. For the second one and the third one, the improvement was real, but less important. So we conclude that the brachialis was the main muscle involved in flexion elbow spastic deformation. And all the data were statistically significant. Here is some pictures about a patient before all the series of block. Here it's the patient just after the first block, so the brachialis branch block, and here it's after the 3 blocks. So you can see there is not a big difference between both, but a big one in which this one and this one. So this study has some limitations, of course. Blocks order wasn't randomized. We can explain that cause anatomical variation. The brachialis has a double innervation, and in 80% of cases is also innervated by radialis nerve. The brachialis has to be blocked before the biceps brachii, because they are both innerved by the musculocutaneous nerve. So you have to start close to the elbow, so distally, to be more selective. Another limitation was the full passive elbow extension was not completed despite the 3 blocks. You can explain that with the overactivity of the accessory elbow flexor muscles. They can be blocked by blocking the median nerve. And there is some changes in the intrinsic characteristics of the muscles. It can lead to retraction. In this case, you can perform functional surgery. So this is a flowchart summary of the systematic procedure to determine the muscle involved in a spasticity. We choose the elbow, but we can choose another joint. So to finish, we determine anatomical landmarks to perform a motor block of the brachialis nerve. The brachialis muscle was the most involved in the flexion pattern. This muscle should be the first target of treatment to improve arm flexion. And it should be confirmed, those findings should be confirmed in the bio-randomized trials to evaluate the effect of botulinum toxin injection in the different flexure muscles. And that could be the first step for developing guidelines. And this systematic approach to assess the muscle involved in a spasticity pattern should be further developed for other spastic deformations. Thank you for your attention.